Check out our new sponsors, The Games Cube. It's a great family-run local game store boasting Australia's biggest selection of MTG singles. Use the coupon code The Eternal Gathering to get 5% off store-wide. Check their site out in the link below. G'day everyone, welcome to The Eternal Gathering. The Gathering here with another deck tech for Modern, and we're doing Dredgevine deck here. It is basically my take on the Dredge archetype in Modern. Obviously, Dredge, if you're not aware with it, is a ability where you're playing things mostly from your graveyard. So it's a graveyard-centric deck. It was once one of the very top decks in the meta, probably last year or 2 years ago, probably when Hogak was around, if people remember Hogak. But as Dredge has come and gone in favor of other decks, I still think it's a pretty good overall deck. It performs quite well in most metas. It's always there about definitely between tier 1 and tier 2. So this is my take. I play Vengevine. There are Vengevine decks that play Vengevine more heavily into the Vengevine and less into the Dredge. Vengevine being a creature that can come back from the graveyard whenever you cast your second creature spell. In that turn, you can bring it back from the graveyard, and it has haste, most importantly. It's 4/3 haste. So if it's in the graveyard, it sees that you've cast 2 creatures, it can come back, and that's for every single one in the graveyard. So you can have up to 4, obviously, in your graveyard and can't bring them back. So that is one of the main kind of engines, win conditions in this deck. You've also got Conflagrate, another card that can do a lot of damage, along with your Creeping Chills, which get incidental value when they get milled by yourself. So basically what you're trying to do for this deck is mill yourself as much as possible, as quick as possible, and then trying to play things either from your graveyard. Most of your cards can be played from your graveyard, or can be drawn from your graveyard using the dredge mechanic. So for example, if we look at Bloodghast, Bulgari Thug. Bulgari Thug has a dredge 4, which will allow you to draw it whenever you were to draw by milling 4 cards instead. So you've got ways to draw cards in your deck, mainly being through Cathartic Reunion, being able to draw 3 cards and discarding 2. You've also got Instant Neonate, being able to discard a card and then draw a card. What you want to do with your Instant Neonate and your Cathartic Reunions, discarding dredge cards and then drawing them back, dredging them back basically into your hand to mill some more cards over. So let's just go straight into the creatures, go one by one. Carrion Feeder. So Carrion Feeder here is a way to protect your Vengevines. It is a good sack outlet. It can get itself become quite a strong creature. It gets +1/+1 counter whenever you sacrifice a creature to it. It's also there as a zombie to be able to play your grave crawlers. So you've got grave crawlers that can go in your graveyard, and you can cast them from your graveyard as long as you control another zombie. So if we have Carrion Feeder on the battlefield, we can play a grave crawler, sack the grave crawler, play a grave crawler, sack the grave crawler, and continue that each turn, and get lots and lots of value and more +1/+1 counts on our Carrion Feeder. It also protects our Vengevines. If they were to get Path to Exile, for example, or something like that, you can sack it in response to put the Vengevine back into your graveyard so you can cast Vengevines later on. Instant Neonate, basically there as your 1-drop that you want to put a dredge card into your graveyard. So you want to be putting a dredge card and then drawing that dredge card straight away. So what happens here is you discard a card, and then you sacrifice it first before you draw a card. So what you're going to do is discard the dredge, sacrifice Instant Neonate, and then you're going to dredge that card back to your hand that you just discarded with the Instant Neonate. Sigil Supplier, another way to get things into your graveyard when it dies. Another good sack for Carrion Feeder, because whenever it dies, it also get the mill 3. Bloodghast, just easy, comes back whenever you play a land, and has haste if your opponent has 10 or less life. A good way to finish off the game later on in the game when you got them in your graveyard. Bulgari Thug, one of your dredges. You just want to be putting this to dredge. Also, it costs 2 mana, so it's relatively low to the ground, and you can use it as a way to cast a creature when needed to get your vengevines back. Stingray Eve has the most dredge 5, and what you want to be doing is dredging this mostly. You play this creature maybe if you really need something to defend. It has basically Death Touch on it, but most of the time you try and dredge. Therefore, we got the 3 copies because you don't want to play it as a creature. You want to be dredging, and Bulgari Thug as a 4 because it's easy to cast. 4 and a 5 dredge are pretty high, so I'm pretty happy with those there. Spells, Conflagrate, again, you can discard this for 0, so if you just pay to 1 red, do 0 damage. What you want to do is really use a flashback, discarding X cards. So what we want to do is draw into a lot of cards using Life from the Loam, which we'll get to in a sec, and then using it to finish off your opponent. You can do any damage at any time, so you can kill the board if you need to wipe the board. If you need to do straight to the face, you can also do that. Planeswalkers, whatever it might be. Cathartic Reunion we already spoke about, a way to dredge really quickly. Life from the Loam, another dredge, dredge 3 this time, and getting 3 lands from your graveyard to your hand. You're going to be dredging a lot of your lands into your graveyard, so it's a good way to get them back so you can play more and more things. Also, if you want to hold on to those and use it for the Conflagrate later in the game. Your lands, pretty typical Jund base here. You got 4 Blackleaf Cliffs. You really want the fast lands. You got your Blood Crypts, your 1 Forest, the 1 Nurturing Peat Land, 2 Overgrown Tomb, 1 Stomping Ground, 1 Swamp. No mountains. I like to play the Swamp and the Forest, as you guys probably already aware, because if I do run into Blood Moon, at least I've got some way of playing my spells, or knowing that I can play my spells if I draw into these basic lands and play around it. The Bloodstained Mires and the Wooded Foothills are there as well. You're going to be trying to get your color combination really quickly. What you really want is 1 green source and a black and red source, whatever that might be, and possibly, hopefully, you can get another red source as well. I think red, green, and black, you're pretty much even on what you want. Turn 1, you really want to be playing a red or black spell, being Karen Feeder or Instant Neonate, and then turn 2, you want to be playing 2 black spells possibly, or a red and black spell, but you also want to have that green available to be able to play Life from the Loam and get your lands back to get a bigger hand or whatnot. So sideboard wise, we got 2 Pithing Needles, another card here to stop against Planeswalkers or other things that have activated abilities that might be, I guess, problematic. Prop Decay and Assassin's Trophy are your removals. If you really need to remove things such as Rest in Pieces, Leyline of the Voids that are against you, you've got ways to do that. Shenanigans, destroying an artifact, and also another dredge. This is obviously against artifact decks. Gnaw to the Bone, this is really good against your aggressive decks, against Burn, for example, or Blitz. You're bringing this in. It has a flashback cost of 3. You gain 2 life for each creature card in your graveyard, which can be quite a lot if you're starting to dredge quite early. Sweltering Suns, another way to wipe the board against token decks, token strategies, or burn decks, or that have the Blitz decks that have those really small creatures that can be pumped really quickly, because on your turn you can just deal 3 damage, and usually that's enough to kill those creatures, reset the board. And also, even if you have creatures out there, you can reset your board, you can get your stuff back from the graveyard. Your opponent likely cannot, so that is why Sweltering Sun's there. It's also a way to dredge if needed with the cycling ability. And finally, Leyline of the Void, 3 there to bring in against any graveyard strategies that you're going against, not affecting your own graveyard. That's the number 1 reason that you don't want to affect your own graveyard. So mostly when you play this deck, you really want to be making sure you've got at least 2 lands in hand, and you then want to also have a way to be able to discard cards to dredge as soon as possible. Stats wise, we got here a very low mana curve. I believe the average mana is 2, You got mostly creatures, sorceries are there too, and you're really just trying, like I said, to get through as much damage as quick as possible by bringing those vengevines back, or by dredging a lot so that you're able to build a large board and bring them back and bring them back and bring them back. So there's a sample hand right there. That would work well. You have your Sigil Supplier to mill 3, or your Instant Neonate to use with Life Alone to dredge 3 straight away on turn 1, which is a good play in and of itself. You also like to have a couple of creatures in your hand out of 1-drops so that you can play the Vengevine next turn if you were to get into those Vengevines. Anyways, guys, this deck, I think, at the moment, I haven't been playing Modern because we are in lockdown here in Australia and we cannot play any real competitive Magic at the moment, which is unfortunate. Also unable to get any products with the lockdown at the moment, so thought I'd do a quick deck tech. Dredgevine being one of my favorite decks to play, and a really strong deck. It can really destroy your opponent in game 1, and in game 2 and game 3 it's really interesting trying to play around their graveyard 8 and trying to get through to win there. It sometimes can be, one of the best decks in the format, depending on the meta, depending on if new cards help it out as well, but definitely a really fun graveyard strategy nonetheless. Alright guys, thank you very much for listening. I hope you guys enjoy the deck tech. As always, everything on the stack has resolved, and good games everyone.